in less than an hour before one of the most photographed diplomatic state banquets of the year. A chilling realization settled over the Queen's private dressing room. What Camilla just discovered behind closed doors is that access to the ultimate symbols of British sovereignty has been quietly, ruthlessly revoked. When her senior dresser requested the retrieval of a specific historically profound suite of diamonds from the royal vaults, they were not met with the customary velvet boxes, but with a flat administrative denial. It was a visual humiliation executed in total silence, a jarring reminder that while she wears the crown of a queen consort, she does not hold the keys to the vault. The invisible but ironclad wall of the Crown Estate had just dropped between her and the priceless historic jewels she assumed were hers to control, leaving her completely exposed to the cold reality of her true standing. This is the story of a bloodless financial and historical lockdown, a masterclass in the weaponization of the Royal Collection Trust designed to permanently halt Camilla's final most audacious power grab. By the end of this video, you will understand the exact mechanics of how she attempted to secure priceless royal assets for her non-royal bloodline, how Princess Anne and the office of the Princess of Wales uncovered the paper trail, and the silent retaliation that effectively froze her out of the family's most sacred treasury. This is a forensic look at the devastating moment Camilla realized that the diamonds she wears are nothing more than a temporary loan, and that the institution is already closing the vault doors on her legacy, systematically preserving the heritage of the crown for the rightful bloodline. To grasp the gravity of this sudden protocol enforcement, we must first look at the towering illusion of absolute ownership Camilla had constructed over the past 30 years. Her ascension from the vilified third person in a marriage to the anointed queen was a masterclass in the patient, methodical colonization of the royal space. She had spent decades systematically erasing the lingering ghost of Princess Diana from the public consciousness, reshaping the king's inner circle to ensure her total psychological and administrative dominance. In the minds of her loyalists, her coronation was the final seal of approval, blurring the line between the ancient protected heritage of the crown and her own private family. She operated with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a woman who believed that King Charles's absolute reliance on her meant that the spoils of the monarchy were hers to distribute, as she saw fit, free from the constraints of traditional royal oversight. In the months leading up to this ultimate clash, that sense of untouchable security had reached its absolute zenith, as the king's ongoing health challenges forced him to step back from the daily minutiae of palace management. Camilla moved swiftly to fill the vacuum, increasingly acting as the sole gatekeeper to the sovereign. She assumed that this temporary borrowed authority granted her permanent institutional power. Her strategy subtly shifted from securing mere social prestige for her family to securing tangible historic assets. Camilla truly believed that the sheer momentum of her reign would force the institution to look the other way as she quietly began to test the boundaries of the royal collection, probing for ways to move fiercely protected heirlooms into a gray area of personal, indefinite use for her own children. The trigger for this quiet warfare was a hidden, highly strategic maneuver involving the deeply symbolic archives of the monarchy's jewelry. Utilizing the administrative haze of a transitioning court, Camilla attempted to orchestrate a profound breach of protocol. She directed her staff to file internal paperwork that would grant her daughter, Laura Lopes, unprecedented long-term borrowing rights to a selection of historically significant tiaras and diamond collars. It was a calculated attempt to visually elevate her non-royal daughter to the status of a blood princess at an upcoming elite European society wedding. By placing Windsor heirlooms on the heads of the Parker Bowles bloodline, Camilla sought to establish a visual precedent of co-equality, normalizing her family's access to the very DNA of the British crown and creating a photographic record that would bind her family to royal history forever. What Camilla failed to account for, however, was the cold, unblinking vigilance of the true guardians of the crown, Princess Anne and the deeply loyal aides surrounding Catherine, the Princess of Wales. As the Princess Royal and the undisputed enforcer of family discipline, Anne has spent years silently cataloging the creeping overreach of Camilla's faction. When the unprecedented requisition forms for the jewelry were flagged by the keepers of the Royal Collection Trust, they were immediately routed not to the king's desk, but to the senior working royals. Anne and Catherine's aides uncovered the digital paper trail. They saw the quiet adjustments to inventory lists, the unauthorized attempts to reclassify state assets as personal family loans, and the deliberate circumvention of the stringent security protocols established over decades by the late Queen Elizabeth. For Anne and Catherine, this was not a simple matter of borrowing a necklace for a weekend. It was a staggering exploitation of a vulnerable king's authority and a direct threat to the historical integrity of the monarchy. The moral outrage within the future court was profound, driven by the commercial desperation that seemed to underpin Camilla's maneuver. They recognized that Camilla was rushing to weaponize her temporary absolute power to secure legacy assets for her family before the inevitable transition of the crown. But the response from the true power centers of the palace would not involve shouting matches, family interventions, or leaked tabloid tirades. Instead, it would be an exercise in the silent, ruthless deployment of constitutional and administrative power designed to humiliate through pure bureaucratic efficiency. Under the quiet direction of Princess Anne, working in perfect tandem with William and Catherine's senior staff, the Royal Collection Trust activated what palace insiders refer to as a vault lock. On the afternoon of the state banquet, the trap snapped shut with devastating administrative precision. When Camilla's senior dresser arrived at the heavily guarded vaults beneath the palace, fully expecting to collect the requisitioned diamonds for the queen and the secondary pieces destined for her daughter, she was met with a locked door and a cold printed mandate. The entire inventory protocol had been dramatically overhauled overnight. The new mandate clearly stated that all pieces of historical significance were strictly restricted to the reigning sovereign and the Princess of Wales, requiring a dual sign-off that completely bypassed the Queen Consort's independent authority. Camilla was informed politely but firmly through her staff that the pieces she had intended to secure for her daughter were officially classified as unavailable. Furthermore, her own access for the evening had been sharply downgraded. Instead of the sweeping historical diamonds she had selected, she was presented with a minor, less historically resonant suite of jewelry. That detail matters immensely because in the hyper-symbolic world of the British monarchy, jewels are not merely decorative accessories. They are the physical manifestation of power lineage and institutional hierarchy. To be denied access to the primary vault and relegated to secondary pieces is a public strip mining of status, a non-verbal declaration that the institution views you as a temporary custodian, not a permanent owner. Standing in her dressing room gazing at the inferior jewels she was now forced to wear, the psychological weight of this institutional retaliation settled heavily over the Queen. She was trapped in the ultimate contradiction, sitting at the absolute pinnacle of social prestige, preparing to host foreign dignitaries yet entirely locked out of the very treasury she believed she commanded. As she prepared to face the cameras, the realization washed over her that an invisible, unbreakable wall had just been built around her. The trap was fully sealed, leaving Camilla to face the terrifying reality that the rightful bloodline had seamlessly executed a masterstroke of revenge, stripping her of her power without a single raised voice. As Camilla stepped out of her private dressing room and into the grand corridors of Buckingham Palace, the physical weight of the lesser diamonds she wore felt less like a regal adornment and more like a heavy chain of administrative restriction. But the true psychological climax of this evening was not the locked door of the royal vault. It was the devastating interaction that occurred moments before the state banquet officially began. Seeking the ultimate override to this bureaucratic humiliation, Camilla intercepted King Charles in a quiet antechamber. She urgently detailed the unprecedented block placed upon her by the Royal Collection Trust, fully expecting the man who had spent 3 decades fighting the entire British establishment for her to instantly summon his authority and reverse the mandate. Instead, she was met with a chilling, insurmountable silence. The king, bearing the visible toll of his ongoing health treatments, and acutely aware of the fragile constitutional balance of his reign, simply refused to intervene. He looked at the woman he had crowned, then looked away, declining to issue the royal command that would override his sister, Princess Anne, and his heir, Prince William. In that single agonizing moment of silence, Charles acknowledged a brutal truth: he was no longer willing, or perhaps no longer able to wage war against the future court on behalf of his wife's family. For Camilla, this lack of action was the ultimate emotional betrayal. It was the exact second she realized that the absolute protection she had, enjoyed as a mistress and a duchess, had evaporated now that she was queen. The king had effectively surrendered the operational control of the monarchy's heritage to the next generation, leaving her entirely defenseless against the cold machinery of the crown. To understand why this silent refusal was so catastrophic, one must unpack the state of commercial desperation that currently haunts Camilla's inner circle. In the ruthless, hyper-stratified world of global aristocracy, access to the Windsor vaults is not a matter of mere vanity. It is the ultimate form of historical and commercial capital. Camilla knows that her title is a lifetime appointment with a strict expiration date. Once Charles is gone, her family will be instantly severed from the sovereign's immense wealth. By attempting to place priceless, historically resonant tiaras on her daughter's head, Camilla was desperately trying to manufacture a visual legacy, a photographic association with the bloodline that could be leveraged by her children long after she is forced to vacate the royal palaces. The locked vault proved that she possesses absolutely zero institutional equity. She owns no castles, she controls no sovereign grants, and without the ability to borrow the crown's history. Her family is left with no royal currency to trade on in the future. This silent execution of power by Princess Anne and the Prince of Wales signals the dawn of a new, uncompromising order within the palace, one that aggressively restores and protects the legacy of the rightful bloodline. For years, the palace apparatus had bent to accommodate Camilla's slow, methodical erasure of Princess Diana's institutional memory. But the current power dynamic is now entirely anchored by the silent endurance and undeniable popularity of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. While Catherine has spent the past year navigating profound personal and health challenges with uncomplaining sacrifice, prioritizing the dignity of the crown over personal PR, her standing as the untouchable future of the monarchy has become absolute law. Anne and William's actions to secure the royal collection were not just about stopping Camilla. They were a definitive, administrative declaration that the stage is being permanently cleared for Catherine. The forensic proof of this shift is hidden in the subtle, deeply symbolic updates to royal protocol that have trickled out in the weeks following the banquet. Keen observers of the British monarchy noticed a profound visual geography change regarding the crown's most legendary pieces. Jewels heavily associated with Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, pieces that Camilla had long viewed as her own eventual inheritance, have been quietly reclassified by the Trust. They are now officially earmarked exclusively for the current Princess of Wales, permanently bypassing the Queen Consort's office. Furthermore, striking portraits of Princess Diana wearing iconic royal jewels have subtly re-emerged from the archives, strategically placed in public exhibitions sanctioned by the Trust. These are not coincidences. They are the silent visual executions of an institution that is actively self-correcting, using art and diamonds to remind the world exactly who the mother of the future king is. What looked like a simple dispute over borrowing a necklace was in reality a total dismantling of Camilla's long-term strategy. She spent 30 years masterfully manipulating the emotional vulnerabilities of King Charles, believing that controlling the man meant she controlled the empire. But she fatally underestimated the cold, self-preserving nature of the British crown. The institution has an incredibly long memory, and under the iron-willed guardianship of Princess Anne and the strategic foresight of Prince William, the system has weaponized its own bureaucracy to protect its history from being stripped for parts. As the state banquet proceeded, Camilla sat beside the king, sparkling under the chandeliers, playing the part of the ultimate victor to the global press. Yet beneath the polished American smiles and the diplomatic toasts, she harbored the devastating realization that her empire is entirely hollow. She is a tenant in a palace owned by her stepson, wearing borrowed jewels from a vault she cannot open, married to a king who can no longer protect her from the inevitable. The illusion of absolute power has been permanently shattered, proving once again that in the unforgiving theater of the royal family, you cannot marry into the bloodline and you can never outmaneuver the crown. If you found this forensic analysis of the royal family's shifting power dynamics and silent institutional warfare compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Princess Anne and Prince William were right to use the royal vault as a weapon to protect the crown's legacy? Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next story.